In my hands, I have the 8BitDo Pro 3. Wait a minute, that's not it. In my hands, I have the 8BitDo Pro 3 controller, and as I understand it, people have been waiting a long time for this. There's actually the original one, I think it's called the SN30 Pro, then they had the Pro 2, and now we have the Pro 3. What I'm going to do is focus only on the things that I think are really important to you if you're watching controller reviews on this channel. Mainly, how do the buttons feel, and how does the D-pad feel, and then we'll go through some of the main features of the controller as well. Now, quick disclaimer, of course, this controller was sent to me for the purposes of making this video, but I wasn't instructed to say anything specific about it. I don't have to send it back at the end, and all opinions are my own. With that out of the way, let's talk about the main features of this controller. As you can see, it is very much like the original Super Nintendo controller, but the first one that they made of this, I think it was like a Super Nintendo controller with two analog sticks just kind of stuck in here. But it's kind of difficult to hold the controller steady if you don't have little handles. On the second version, it looked basically like this. And now here on the Pro 3, we also have a number of extra features. We still have the analog sticks, back buttons here on the back, shoulder buttons, shoulder triggers, and these extra shoulder buttons that are kind of small. It's kind of the way that it was handled on the Nintendo 3DS when they had like the extra ZL and ZR buttons kind of squeezed in onto the new 3DS. So the first thing I want to say about this controller is that it comes in 3 different color options. The first 2 kind of just look like standard Super Nintendo controllers, but this one, the purple one, is really nice because it has got that kind of GameCube feel. Plus, it has these colorful buttons that you can swap out. You can swap these buttons out for the other buttons, which I'll explain later. And although most people looking at this controller are probably going to be thinking about using it for the Nintendo Switch, it does also work on Windows, Android, and I think some other platforms as well. Switch controllers don't usually have analog controls over here where you can actually get a little bit of push or a full press. And if you want it to act like a standard Switch Pro controller with no analog triggers, you can just press these 2 buttons to lock them in place, and then suddenly you've got these buttons that only go so far. It's either on or it's off. And it's very, very quick, and as I understand it, this is a big deal for people who play Splatoon. They need a controller where it can go all the way down without having to depress the button all the way. You can go into the 8BitDo Ultimate software and you can customize it so that it actuates even if you press it only a little bit. There's a little slider, you can change it to actuate all the way on a full press, or you can say, I only want to press it halfway and get the full press of the button. So plenty of flexibility there. The way I think of it, it's a Switch controller that if you want to use it on PC, you can, because it is capable of having the full throw of the button instead of just being a Switch controller, which you wouldn't be able to use for like racing games or things that actually need fine control. But what you really want to hear about is the D-pad on this controller. Now, most people are not going to be buying this to be a fighting game controller, but if I bought this as a second controller for when friends come over, would they also be able to use it for fighting games? I'm currently playing Street Fighter 6, which is one of the popular fighting games at the moment, and as you can see, for basic stuff, it does all the things that you would expect. Left, right, down, and if I press up, I'll get a jump. I can also jump diagonally, and I generally find I don't get like accidental jumps. There are some D-pads where you'll be like moving around, or you're holding left and then you'll like get this accidental jump. Like the 8BitDo Ultimate, which I've got over here, it's got a semi-clicky D-pad, which they call a tactile D-pad. So you actually feel a little tactile bump every time you press on the directions here. Having all of those little clicks is really nice if you're like just getting into fighting games. However, there are some reasons why I might not choose this as my fighting game controller. When I press down back, if I go from down back to down forward, it actually skips the neutral down position. This is very common, so there's very few controllers that can actually do this. Seeing as this is kind of a casual gamer aimed focused controller, it's not going to be able to like do the things that a lot of fighting gamers kind of expect. 100% of the time skips it. It's very difficult to make it give me the neutral input unless I go down back, down, down forward. And of course, at that speed, the combo just wouldn't come out. So to demonstrate, I'm now in this game Under Night In-Birth, where this is extremely common. You normally want to be able to like roll from this down forward C position when you do an anti-air, like someone's jumping at you. You want to roll from this position into whatever you want to do next. But as you can see, the down just never comes out. This controller would be considered completely unusable in this particular game. Most people are not going to be choosing this as a fighting game controller. Most of the time when I've been testing this controller, I've been using it in something like Mario Kart, or I've been playing Animal Crossing, just stuff on my Switch. The D-pad feels really nice if you're a casual gamer, or if you're just playing things that don't involve technical motions in a fighting game. Even if you're playing like a platform game like, I don't know, Super Mario Maker and you're playing a really difficult level, it might actually be totally fine. However, that brings me on to my next point. This D-pad's a little bit sluggish. I don't actually know if physically it's different to the 8BitDo Ultimate 3, which, by the way, is the same price. I don't think one is supposed to be better than the other. They're just kind of aimed at different markets. Because of the Super Nintendo layout, it's a lot closer to a PlayStation controller. So in theory, I should prefer this as my fighting game controller, but the D-pad feels a little bit sluggish. And I'm talking like very minor, this is a very minor difference. If you're a casual and you only use up, down, left, and right to like select different weapons or change the camera angle in a 3D game, it's probably not going to bother you. If you want to play a fighting game and you want to have a D-pad that moves a lot more quickly, this feels looser and faster. All right, so those are my main opinions on the D-pad, but let's look at the other main features of this controller, which make it kind of fun and more fun than the Ultimate controller for the same price. So you can see these analog sticks. These actually come off and you get these little attachments where you can slide them on. They actually look like this. And personally, I would never actually use them, but as you can see, it's kind of fun. You could kind of pinch them like this and use them. I can't think of any situation where you would actually use these controllers. They're really tall. Like, you want your thumb to be here. You just like lift your thumb all the way over to reach over to these balls. If you're a live streamer, this could be a fun challenge to like see if you can use a controller like this to, I don't know, in a way you could also make it feel like you've got a mini little arcade stick. Personally, I don't have any need for it. You can actually remove these buttons. So I've got green, blue, yellow, and red on here at the moment, but you can actually pull them off with your finger and just, where's it gone? You can just remove them because I believe they are, as you can see, magnetic. Inside the dongle, it actually has a place for you to hide the extra buttons. This tool is actually, this is the most bizarre thing I've ever seen in my life. So if you take the tool and you stick it to the top of the button, it will suction cup itself there and then you can just pry it off. It's the most bizarre thing. As a gift, it's kind of nifty. It's like, hey, you know, Merry Christmas. Now, there's many reasons why you might want to replace the buttons. You could have it like a standard Super Nintendo controller where it's YXBA. But when you go back to your Windows computer, you might be like, you know, that really bugs me. Suction cup them off like so. Sometimes it doesn't work, and then just replace them in the order that you think they should be. What about my OCD? As you can see, my A is slightly tilted. If you check out the base of these buttons, they've actually got a little nub at the top of the button, and that actually matches up with a little ridge here. It causes the button to slot in perfectly. And as a plus, these extra accessories are magnetic and they will fit into the base of the dock like so, except that they kind of are a little bit too tall, so you have to put them in sideways. Oh no, I've just lost one of the buttons. Okay, that's embarrassing. In the middle of doing this review, one of the buttons went flying behind my desk. However, that brings me on to one of my pet peeves with this controller, and it's the fact that although this dock allows you to hide and store these extra buttons and the little tool that helps you remove them, it doesn't actually fit the other accessories. So you can see I've got these analog stick covers. If I try to put them in here as well, they're not magnetic and they don't really fit because, as you can see, there's not really enough space because of the dongle, which is hiding in here. This dongle here is actually USB-C, and it goes into the dongle, and as long as the dongle itself is plugged into the computer, it's the same as having the dongle plugged directly into the computer. And actually, the only reason I've got the dock plugged in is that I don't have USB-C on my main computer. So the only way for me to plug a USB-C into my computer is to use a dongle or to use this dock, which is basically a dongle. And as you can imagine, these ball tops also don't fit into the compartment because there's just not enough space in there. That's a bit of a letdown. But then again, at this price, you're getting a lot of controller for the money. Now let's talk about the shoulder buttons on this controller because they're a little bit different to the 8BitDo Ultimate 3, which has an interesting layout where you've got the shoulder button, the shoulder trigger, and then you also have an extra R4 button in between the shoulder and the trigger button. On this controller, the extra buttons are kind of inset like the 3DS position, so I think it's easier to actually use them on the Ultimate. I guess the last thing to do is to compare it to the Ultimate 3 overall. And the thing is that, I think I've mentioned this earlier, but they're pretty much the same price. $69.99 for the Bluetooth version of the Ultimate 3, and also $69.99 for the Pro 3. So really it comes down to, do you like the position of these extra buttons on the shoulders here where they're inset or they're kind of in line like here on the Ultimate 3? And also, do you prefer the Xbox Switch Pro layout or the Super Nintendo PlayStation layout? In theory, I should have liked this layout more, but again, the D-pad doesn't really do it for me for fighting games. So although I prefer this layout, and I would much prefer to use this in, casual gaming, and this is what I use when I'm playing Mario Kart or Animal Crossing or Puyo Puyo or Panel de Pon or whatever it is, I prefer it to this layout, but then I prefer the D-pad on this controller. The other thing to mention is that the Ultimate 3 is a little bit older, and so it's usually on sale. You can get the non-Bluetooth version for $49.99 on sale usually, and then a Bluetooth version is like $59.99 on sale, whereas the Pro 3 just isn't on sale yet because it's a newer controller, but before, probably in a month, this will also be on sale. And if you just check for the seasonal sales, it may have already been on sale. The Pro 3, definitely more fun, and I like the PlayStation layout. The Ultimate 3, ultimately speaking, no pun intended, this does have the better D-pad, so I kind of prefer this if I were going to use it for fighting games. But the truth is, I wouldn't use either of these for fighting games. Think of these as Switch controllers that you can also use on other things like Windows. Really, on this channel, the main thing I really wanted to get across was how the D-pad feels and whether I would use it in fighting games. And although I wouldn't use it specifically for fighting games, and I also wouldn't use it, I wouldn't give this to a friend and say, okay, you play the fighting game on this controller. It's kind of unusable as a fighting game controller, but if you play a lot of games that are mostly analog stick based and you only need the D-pad for like selecting weapons or changing camera angles, I think this is a really great controller. So if you came to this channel specifically because I go into detail about the D-pad, I hope this video has been helpful to you. It's been fun. I do like using this controller for other things that are not fighting games. I think it's a really fun, it's also just really nice to have a PlayStation layout controller without trying to hook up a PlayStation controller to my Switch and having to use like an adapter, and sometimes it's not exactly what you would expect. Nice to have a dedicated Switch controller with a PlayStation layout. That's it for today. Hope you've enjoyed this video. I've been NihongoGamer. I'll see you real soon.